Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's up, everybody? So, before we jump into the article for today, which is a pretty short one, by the way, I'd just like to let you all know that I am currently collaborating with Jen and Lisa from the Prince and the Pervert podcast about a new show that we're going to do together, which is basically going to be a roundtable format where we discuss the Epstein case, we have guests come on and we interview them, etc., etc. We figured, and together we thought that it would be another good tool to add to the coverage of this case. And hopefully we can get some pretty interesting people to pop on and talk to us and share their knowledge of all the different facets of the case as we go forward. Now, like I said, it's still in its infancy. We haven't really discussed, all the details or when we'll launch it or anything like that. But I just wanted to share with all of you out there the good news that there's going to be a new program that all three of us are collaborating and working on together. And I'm really excited to do that, right? Because Jen and Lisa are very good at what they do. I really respect their work. They tirelessly cover this case, and they do it not looking for any gain, not looking to increase their own wealth or anything like that. It's all because they truly care about justice in the case, and they truly care about these survivors. And for me, that's the most important part. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about credit in this case. I don't care about being involved in breaking stories. That's not what I do. That's not the format of this podcast, as you all know. I don't make pretend that I have all these secret sources or anything like that. What I do here is I cover the news. Whatever is put out in the mainstream media or the outlets that are covering this case, we read them on air and we break them down. Simple as that. There's no gray area. It is what it is, right? I read articles on here, I dissect them, I read between the lines, and I give you my opinion on the articles. Right? This isn't a breaking news show. This is a news commentary program. All right? That's what this is. And what we'll be doing on the roundtable will probably have a little bit more of an investigative journalism flair to it. But again, I'll leave that to Lisa and Jen and the professionals. That's not my role. That's not what I am. I'm not a trained journalist. I'm not a trained investigative journalist. I'm a content creator. I comment on the news. That is exactly what I do. That's what I've done from the very beginning, and that's what I will continue to do here on the podcast. Now, every now and then, I might get a tidbit of information thrown my way from a source or from somebody who might have some intimate knowledge of the case, and I pass that on to you folks right away. But as everybody knows who listens to this podcast, I've been very clear about what I do here, and there's about 400 entries in the catalog for you to go back and listen to understand what the format is here on the podcast. Now, there are just tons and tons and tons of great independent journalists when it comes to this case. I mean, there are tons of them. And hopefully what we can do on the roundtable that Jen and Lisa and I are tossing around is hopefully we'll be able to get some of them to come on, maybe one a week, and just go through it and talk to all of the investigative journalists that are really hitting the ground running in this case and putting in a lot of hard work. There's a ton of really good, hard-working independent journalists that are covering this case. And those are the people that are breaking the stories. My role is to cover those stories once they break. So once we start the other format with the roundtable and the discussion phase, I think that it'll bring another aspect to the case, and it will also just be another forum and another vehicle for information to be gathered and shared. Because really, that's what this is all about, right? This is all about gathering as much information as possible, putting it out into the public view, and hopefully, with all of the public pressure being focused on the prosecutors and the people who are supposed to be chasing the perpetrators down in this case, hopefully there'll be some movement in that regard. Now, that's all I really care about, folks, okay? I care about justice in this case. I don't care about credit. I don't care about me, becoming the story or making money. None of that matters to me. Zero of that matters to me. I don't know how many times I have to explain it. The first time, the whole entire premise of this podcast when we first started it, Lee and I, well, basically we thought it would be him and I chatting to, 40 or 50 of our friends. We never figured it would be this huge rolling snowball. I never promoted the podcast. I've never marketed it. I've never paid for an advertisement for it. None of that stuff. I really don't care about any of that. Because even if I wasn't on the podcast yapping away, I'd be talking about these same subjects with my friends or in my parents' backyard with my father. Right? The whole entire purpose of this podcast and me covering this case is simple. I'm just an average guy, right? Just an average person like most of you. But I'm outraged by this. And I couldn't sit silent anymore when I knew that there was all kinds of crazy-ass government corruption going on here. So that was my main motivation to get started in this case, was the government corruption. And then it spiraled out of control for me, and it became not only a passion covering this case, but an addiction. And once you start learning, for me, like I said, it was the government corruption angle was the original pathway that led me here. But once I was on the pathway, and I started to take a look around at all of the trees and all of the bushes, and I started to read all of the stories from the survivors, it became a whole other thing as well. And the other motivation, and which is the main motivation at this point, is justice for these survivors. Anything besides that, anything that gets in the way of that is all gray noise. Any nonsense that gets in the way of that is gray noise. So what we can do as independent content creators is just to continue to spit out the content, continue to spit out the information, and hopefully people become aware of what has been going on for decades right under their noses. And that's the format here on this podcast, right? We cover the news here. We cover articles that are printed by whatever outlet you could possibly imagine. And we dissect them on the air, we go through them, and we read between the lines. That is the format of the Jeffrey Epstein Show. We're not a news-breaking outlet. I'm not running around, acting like I have sources placed strategically all over the globe. None of that nonsense, right? I cover what the news puts out, and I try to read between the lines, and I try and dissect it to the best of my ability, and I give you my opinion of what I think is going on, right? And we use evidence to get to that point. So we have tons and tons of evidence that's out in the public view, right? So what we do here on the podcast is we compile that with all of these articles that we read. We add it to the catalog. And then later on, we can go back and we can jump into the catalog in various places and see how those articles are holding up today with the current reporting. So it's one of those things where you have to just connect the pieces, right? And that's what I try to do here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I try to keep everything in a nice, organized format where we can follow the case on a day-to-day basis. Now, with the Roundtable project that Jen and Lisa and I are going to bring out, it'll be a different animal. Now, we'll cover the news as well, but we're going to have some other stuff on there. Like I said, I would love to have it more of an interview-based program where we bring on other investigative journalists, other content creators, and we talk about their work, what they're working on, what angles that they have, because at the end of the day, it's very important that we continue to communicate with each other and we continue to bounce ideas off of each other because, like I've said from the beginning, it's not me, it's we, all of us, all of you, especially the listeners, are the most important part, right? So us content creators, we just have a platform and for the most part, big mouths. But the real people that are getting into it, the real people that are the ones making the most noise are the listeners. So with the Roundtable, I'd like to do more of a I guess you would say, more of an intimate kind of format where we have a lot of ideas come through the door, and I want to expose the listeners to a whole range of different content creators and different independent journalists who are working on this case, because there are so many good people out there covering this case, and so many knowledgeable people who have followed this from the very beginning, who have a lot to offer. So I would love to have that platform to offer folks that chance to, speak with you, the listeners. So that's a little bit about what we have going on. And again, it's just in its infancy stages, and there could definitely be changes to what the format will be as Jen, Lisa, and I sit down and go over it more and really get into the weeds to figure out what's what. We'll get more of an idea of what the actual 100% locked-in format will be at the end of the day. So, with that said, let's jump into the article today. It's a pretty short one, but this is an article from August 29th of 2019, and it's from the State Press, and it has to do with Arizona State and the Origins Project that received $2 million from associates of Jeffrey Epstein. Headline: Arizona State University's Origins Project received $2 million from associates of Jeffrey Epstein. ASU received over $2 million from groups associated with billionaire and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to reporting from BuzzFeed. Well, we know that Jeffrey Epstein was always dishing out big money to scientists and universities, and he was in the form of endowments and throwing dough to them on the side, etc., etc. So when we hear about stuff like this ASU thing, it doesn't shock you, right? It's par for the course at this point. We know that there are a lot of scientists that Jeffrey Epstein had his hand in their work, had his hand in their pocket almost. And we know that these scientists who were accepting money from Jeffrey Epstein, most of them lied about it. The money was given to the Origins Project, which was led by former ASU professor Lawrence Krauss, who left the university following his own sexual misconduct allegations. How many times do we see that as well? Fellow travelers, right? Like I always talk about. The fellow travelers. It's no shock that Lawrence Krauss, a guy who had his own sexual misconduct allegations leveled against him, would be hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein or accepting money from Jeffrey Epstein. It's Jeffrey Epstein's people. According to donation documents from the Origins Project obtained by BuzzFeed, Epstein and his associates made 9 separate donations between December 2010 to April 2017, totaling to $2.25 million to the organization. Isn't that nice? Isn't that fantastic, folks? Arizona State, another fantastic university that has Jeffrey Epstein's slimy paw prints all over it. Epstein's individual donations totaled $250,000 and were made through Enhanced Education, one of his foundations. The other $2 million was donated by 2 of Epstein's associates, Leon and Deborah Black. Now, we've talked about Leon Black before and his financial group and his ties with Jeffrey Epstein, and how him and Jeffrey Epstein were really close. They were really, really close. And the fact that Leon Black tries to downplay it is laughable at best. The money was given in 3 separate personal donations from the Black family. Leon Black donated a total of $1.5 million in 2 separate donations, and Deborah Black gave a one-time donation of $500,000. These people, I'll tell you what. And then what they'll do is they'll hide behind that charity like it's a shield, right? Oh, this is our charity. We can never do anything like this. We're such charitable people. We would never, ever, ever be involved with Jeffrey Epstein. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, they're all hanging out together on a regular basis. The Origins Project was founded by Krauss in 2008 and worked to bring scientists to ASU to speak at conferences and host various events. Following Krauss's departure, the project lost its name and shifted under the ASU Interplanetary Initiative, which is led by Lindy Elkins Tanton, director of the School, Earth, and Space Exploration. Krauss did not respond to an email requesting comment. Epstein died by suicide earlier this month, allegedly. So again, folks, just another example of a scientist and a university that used money from Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein's friends to conduct their business. This is all after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted the first time, by the way. So they don't have a leg to stand on if they try and use that "I didn't know" excuse, okay? So just remember that when we're hearing about all of these so-called fine institutions and all of these so-called super smart, intelligent scientists that were hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. Just keep all of this stuff in mind. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on that cesspool we call Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, until later on, enjoy your day.